So this is the CAD training number 1, and there's a couple of different ways that you can do this, but I am just going to do a quick demonstration and show you one way. First off, thank you to those of you that have done this. That's great. And I want to emphasize a few key things on this. So let me just open this up. So I'm just going to create a new document so that way I don't change the original. And so looking through this, you've got what parts you can use, and these techniques are really, really useful. So it's really, really worthwhile to take the time to work through them. I'll just close this up. So this is my copy now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a part in context. That will just make it much easier. I'm going to select the origin and click OK. Now, the key thing is that the battery is going to be upside down, so I'm just going to pick, actually, I'm going to pick this side. The reason I'm picking this side is because then it's going to be a context. You can see how it's purple, and N to normalize my view. And that way, as I'm designing this, I'm not going to be stuck with that. So I'm just going to, what I'm going to do is select this line and that line, and I'm going to use those. And I'm going to select that line and that line and use them. So now, oops, just do a rectangle, make sure it's touching this line, make sure it is touching that line. So I don't want to set the distance at all. And what I will do is this rectangle is going to be 1 inch. And I can see if I position it here, it's going to, that hole's going to be right in the middle. I think this is going to be really good, so I will use that. And I'm just going to do the same thing down here. And just hit escape so I don't set the distance. Use the diameter tool. And for this one, I'll use these 2 holes. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to force these lines to be 1/2 inch so that the holes are right in the middle. Okay, so there's my pieces. I'm just going to turn these pieces into construction lines. And I think I'm good. So let's just extrude those. And just going to check the direction, but the depth for that will be 1/8 of an inch. And there we go. So I have my 2 aluminum pieces that are going to be the flats, and now I'm going to join. I'm going to use I'm going to use the top of the piece. So once again, I will use those lines. And I'm going to use this line just so that I can get the geometry. Now this is 1 inch in diameter. Just drag it over here, and same thing over here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a little tiny gap here. So the thickness of the metal is 1/8. I'm just going to add 1/16, just a little tiny gap. And same thing over here. So 1/8 plus 1/16. These lines are just going to be construction lines, just so that I can get my geometry worked out. And I will need a hole, being very careful not to get, whoops, escape. I don't want a construction line, being very careful not to get orange. And this is going to be where my machine screw goes. So I'll have one there, I'll have one, be very careful not to get orange, one there. The equal sign, so the letter E allows me to set these equal in size so that I can quickly size everything. And this needs to be 1/2 inch from the edge. You try to keep everything 1/2 inch so that it's just neat and tidy. Now I'm just looking at this. The problem if I do this now, so I'm going to show my constraints. So you see the use constraint. I'm just going to move that. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm just going to drag that up just a little bit. Whoops. You know what? I'm just going to undo that. And I'm just going to go back and fix this. I'm going to need a bit more space so that I can have the bolt right there. So I'm just going to what I'm going to do is instead of a 1/2 inch, we'll do a 1/4 inch. That should still be enough space. And it brings me flush down here, but that gives me enough leeway there. And I can always just trim that off. Just realized I'm doing the wrong one. That's what you do when you do this late at night. There we go. Okay, so now that I've got that, now I can do a new sketch. Use those, just make sure that they're going to be construction lines so I can get the geometry. That's 1 inch, and I'm not going to set that. Inch and just not set the height. The reason I don't want to set the height is it's going to be lock constrained because it's touching that, so I don't want to mess with that. So there's my 1/8 plus 1/16. So now I should be able to do my holes. I probably could have kept all my things. Now this time I'm going to do a little trick. I'm just going to do that so that it forces it to be horizontal, and one down here, forcing it. And then this one, you'll notice that I'm waiting till there we go. And the equal sign to force them all. So this can be 1/2 inch from there. And that should be enough space for the bolt. And this one, so let's just pick down here. Now that should be enough space for the bolt. All right. So I'm going to extrude those. They're going to be new parts. One-eighth of an inch thick. And what I'm going to do now is just do a rectangle using that point. And I'll set my and while I'm at it, I'll do the same thing over here. Dimension tool. And knowing those keyboard shortcuts is crucial to doing this well. And so this sketch I'm going to extrude, and I'm going to extrude it to 1 inch. And I now have my parts. So you can see there's my first two parts. battery mount brace. Call this CAD. And the trick with this is that I can now click on each one and number it so that I can get the numbering. So there's my battery mount brace, part 3. Okay, so this last extrude, the problem is that I need to add that. So I'm going to merge it with those parts. That's why that was. Okay, so these two parts. Okay. Battery mount L brace. I'll deal with that, and I'll show you another trick in a second with that. So I have all my parts. I can insert and go to assembly, and I'm going to select all those 4 parts, and just like that, they're now in the assembly. And yeah, so and I'm just going to select that, and I'm just going to group those things together. And if I go back to my directions, I can see that it is 10:32. So let's so if I'm looking at this, that hole right there, that hole right there, that hole, and that hole, and I'm going to insert standard content, bolts and screws, socket head, hex. So this is 2-inch, that's 1/8 inch, so 2 and 1/8 inch, so I need a minimum 2 1/4, so 2 1/2, that works quite well. So I'll insert those. And over here, so this is only 1/8 inch plus 1/8 inch, so that's 1/4 inch in space for a nut. So I will need ½ inch. And by selecting both of these, whoops, by selecting the faces, everywhere there's a hole, there's the nut. And just checking for clearance, yeah, there's a gap. As long as there's a gap, I'm good. And so on the bottom of this and the bottom of that, I'm going to insert standard content nuts, 1032, insert, and there we go. So I would put a battery mount on there, and we're good to go. There's my bill of materials, and so the parts that I just created down here, you can see I can take the part number, oops, I can just simply copy and paste. Obviously, I want to just edit that so that it's the right number. So the beauty of this particular mount, um, again, there's a lot of ways you can do this, but the beauty of this is that it's really not hard to make. I just need to cut 2 pieces of metal, cut 2 L brackets, um, measure and mark 4 holes, and the holes are positioned 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 an inch, so it's really easy to locate them. Um, I would need, so here's the part studio. I create a drawing. What I've realized is I've got to go back in my, and I'm just going to hide these parts. The problem that I have is I did not remove these circles. So there we go. So removing those circles is really crucial. Refresh my drawing. And you can see here, um, now that is where it gets funky, because I was positioning this based on the battery. So these measurements are really, really difficult to do. So what I would do, mark middle holes based on battery. I'd simply put the L brackets in, place the battery in, and drill them. So the ones on the outside I would use on the drill press, and these I would just mark them and then go use a hand drill and drill them out. So really quick to make this. That's the key aspect, is that it's quick to CAD, it is quick to manufacture, and it's quick to assemble. And all you need is a Velcro strap. But the beauty is the heads of these bolts will actually prevent the battery from going through it. And I know that the battery is technically lying on this. So I could have designed that differently, had a little spacer, but ideally you'll just put the battery on that position. So that's how I would do it, and I'm looking forward to looking through everybody's different ways of doing it.